Lately, the Lord keeps bringing me back to a certain principle that I can state best through the Word. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil and ruin the vineyards while our vineyards are in blossom. Okay, so in a nutshell, basically what that means is picture some fruitful vineyards. They're in blossom. You've got all this wonderful these wonderful clusters of grapes and whatnot, and then suddenly you've got foxes coming in there and running around and just tearing stuff up. This is essentially the Lord telling me, okay, you can be the type of person that you've lived for Jesus for a long time, and you know, you've got ministry thing going, and essentially people can look at your life and know that, you know, your life is Christ-centered, etc., 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 and yet have certain little things going on in either your mind, your speech, your behavior. You can have these things that seem kind of trivial, and yet in your spirit, if you're really honest, you know they're not that trivial. You know that they're causing problems, that like a fox in a vineyard, that they could really do a lot of destruction if you don't rein it in. So maybe you can relate to that. If something is popping into your mind right now, there's a really good chance that that's one of your little foxes. Not long ago, this thing happened at my house, and it was such a great illustration of this truth that I wanted to share it with you. Okay, when my husband and I bought this house about 2 years ago, one of the things that we loved so much about it was this tree in our front yard, and I want to say it's a Norwegian fir, but I'm not sure. Anyway, but it was gorgeous. Seriously, I think I can say it was the prettiest tree on the block. And it was huge. Turned out it was like 45 or 50 feet tall. Anyway, it was gorgeous. So, but we started noticing some things going on with it, like it was losing sap, and then we started seeing all these holes in the bark. And then we noticed one day, Kenny was mowing the yard, and he noticed that the bark was almost like coming away from the tree. Anyway, we're like, Mayday, Mayday. And so we called this lady who's really good with trees, an arborist, I guess she was. Anyway, so she came out and she said, I'm really sorry, this tree has to come down. And of course, my reaction was like, oh, you know, because I love this tree. I love trees. I love trees. And she's telling me we can't save this tree? I said, why not? And she said, well, first of all, and she puts her hand on this flat spot, and she says, first of all, this thing's been twisted by a tornado, and that's why this is flat. Anyway, that my neighbor across the street actually confirmed that did happen. And then she said, also there are sapsuckers, woodpeckers, she said, that are just having a heyday, and that's where all these lines of holes are coming from all over the tree. They've just been noshing on this tree. We were like, okay, this really stinks. But we started saving the money because she said it's going to be a lot of money to cut this tree down because it's so big. So we were saving the money to do that. But then one day we were driving home from visiting somebody, and we pull up on our street and we look around, and there's these chunks of wood, okay? Like, this isn't even nearly the biggest one. Some of them were twice as big, twice as long. These chunks of wood in the yard, in the street, on the front porch, and I wish you could see how far this tree was to the front porch. I mean, it was close enough that if it had fallen over, it would have taken out half the house. And yet it was far enough that we would never have expected to see chunks out of the tree on the front porch. My neighbor texted me after a minute or two, and she said, we got to talk. Your tree was hit by lightning. So it was lightning. It had come in on the top and exploded some of the tree, and then you could see where it had come out, and it was crazy. So we immediately called a tree man to come and look at it and take it down. And oh my gosh, wait, one of the most important things is when I was walking around the outside of the tree where the roots kind of were, you could see on the side near the street where the earth had actually been moved. The lightning had actually taken this 46-foot tree and shifted it. So the earth was pulled up about this much around the side of the tree, and I thought, whoa, this thing was actually trying to come out of the ground, or come out of the ground. And like I said, if it falls on the house, it's going to take out half the house. What if we're asleep in the house? What if we have grandchildren in the house? Anyway, and if it falls the other way, you know, it could take out a car. This thing can kill people. So we called the tree man, and he came out, and he said, you know what? He said, this is all about bugs. He said, bugs ultimately did this. I thought, wow, okay, so this tree has been through a tornado and lived to tell about it. This tree has been struck by lightning, but ultimately, this incredible tree was killed by teeny tiny little bugs. In fact, if you look, okay, let's see if I can do this. Can you see that? Look at all those teeny tiny little holes. Okay, so on the outside of the tree, like I said, there were holes where the woodpeckers were getting to it. But all within the tree, you've got these little teeny tiny holes made by these teeny tiny bugs that you can barely even see, and that's ultimately what killed this tree. It wasn't the crisis, it wasn't the disaster of a tornado, it wasn't the disaster of being struck by lightning, it was the little tiny bugs. After a while, the tree had no substance because of these bugs. It was weightless compared to a regular tree. It had no substance, and that's why it was able to be moved. It was not as grounded as it should have been at all. It was able to be shifted during a crisis because of what was eating it up on the inside. Look at this. Okay, think about this. That's a pretty big hunk of wood, right? If you've ever loaded a fireplace or something, you know, someone like me with no upper body strength, you know, I'm going to try to load a fireplace, but look at that. It weighs virtually nothing. It reminds me of styrofoam, actually. It's just almost weightless. And as this tree was decaying, like we can decay from the inside out, as that happened, it got to the point where it became a danger to others actually. And if it fell, it was going to take out maybe property, maybe even lives. And I thought, wow, you know, because there are times when my husband and I have talked, because as the ministry that God gave us has increased and gotten bigger and bigger, you know, there are more and more people depending on us and watching us. When you're in ministry, people really watch your life. We can't afford to get sloppy in our walk with the Lord. There's just no getting sloppy, because you know what? When you have people watching you and you are an example, and if your life just crashes down around you because of sin, you can really cause a lot of other people to lose hope, or even stumble themselves or sin themselves, or say, well, I guess this doesn't mean anything. This Christ stuff doesn't mean anything. And you can, in a sense, take people out with you. When someone has been given much, much will be required in return. And when someone has been entrusted with much, like some of us have been entrusted, even more will be required. It makes you tremble. It sparks the fear of God. Okay, one more thing I'd like to bring out that a friend mentioned the other day, and I told her, oh gosh, I've got to add that to this teaching. That's so good. Well, you know, in the Bible where it talks about the devil being a thief who's out to just kill, steal, and destroy from us. Well, that word thief actually can mean a parasite that robs a tree of its sap. And I thought that was so interesting because one of the things that stole the life out of that tree were those sapsuckers, were those woodpeckers. Isn't that good? A parasite that robs a tree of its sap, of that life-giving stuff on the inside. So anyway, I hope that this speaks to you like it did to me. And so now we're trying to figure out how to plant some trees before it gets cold outside, because I really miss the tree. So anyway, that's it for now. I love you guys. Join me next time. Please subscribe. I'll see you later.